So today, one of the first sort of tweets I saw was this one right here from Emma. Now, I noticed it because, and it's probably likely in my feed because I follow Case Study QB. And shout out Case Study QB. We're going to be watching this clip in just a second. And, I thought, oh, okay, so Krystal, because I'm going off what Emma's assessment of this exchange. I'm like, oh, this is conservative. Krystal Ball's on there. She's obviously considered the far-right radical leftist who's defending Palestine. She must be saying some good things. So, watch this. She describes it this way, and this is Emma Vigeland from Majority Report, and I didn't know this initially, but I guess she used to be on TYT first, and then she went to the Majority Report. But anyway, great job, Krystal Ball. Little by little, the left is winning over minds on this issue, or at least that's what I have to believe. So keep that context. At least the left is winning over minds. So we're going to be looking for what indication that they're winning over minds and what indication that this is a great job. So let's examine it from that lens here.
The war in Yemen is in its 19th month of truce. For now, the Iranian attacks against U.S. forces have stopped. Our presence in Iraq is stable. I emphasize for now because all of that can change. And the Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
Well, I'll tell you what mistake he made, which is also the same mistake that Biden made, which is also the same mistake that Trump made, was to try to pretend like the Palestinian quote-unquote issue didn't exist, that you didn't have millions of people in Gaza seething under a multi-year blockade, that you didn't have illegal settlements and occupation in the West Bank, that you did not have to deal with these.
You notice in several interviews that I've covered, not just Krystal Ball, I've said this many times with Cornel West, somebody else that went on, we were watching, but a propagandist tactic and a propagandist who knows where their bread is buttered, that's weapons manufacturers, pharmaceutical industry. You can hear when your guest is getting to an area that your donors or the people who pay your bills don't want to go, don't want to get out. And you can hear when she starts to say something at a particular point, he's let me get in. And he'll do it. He does it a couple of times. But let's listen to the rest of this and comment.
These millions of people hear all that. Who are under an illegal apartheid system. And so you had the Trump administration that moved forward with the Abraham Accords, again, ignoring that situation. You had the Biden administration moving ahead with attempted normalization of Saudi and Israeli relations, all pretending that this problem with the Palestinians did not exist. I think the fact that the world forgot that this was unfolding is a key part of the problem here.
My question would be, whose fault is that problem, though? Because you seem to want to blame it on Israel, and you want to
hear this question here. Whose fault is that? Here is where the SOCDEM perspective is the issue. This is where they have a blind spot, I guess you could say, because the simple and quickest and most correct answer, it started in the 1940s when the land was illegally given, carved out parts to Israel. That's where it started. That's not what she's going to say. And then there's going to be some other things I'll have a critique for. But this is the blind spot.
You want to see them take away Israel's right to self-defense.
No, I don't. I don't want to take away their right to self-defense. What I do want to take away is their right to have an apartheid state,
which they don't. Which they don't. Come on, Krystal. Come on, Krystal.
Leland,
no.
right now. Hold on. Let me just say.
Go ahead.
Let me just say. What Hamas did, terrorists, massacre.
Oh, thank you. That's
horrendous.
This right there. What Hamas did, terrorists, all these descriptions. So when I saw this video and you see the description of Emma, great job, I'm like, the audacity. How dare you say this is a great job? And I'll now read my tweet and I'll go back to the video. I'm like, good Lord, these NATO left morons are unbearable. Emma, this isn't a great job. Let me see. Okay, so good Lord, these NATO left morons are unbearable. Emma, this isn't a great job by Krystal. Calling Palestinian resistant tactics terrorist attacks shows that, like other white liberals, they lack the ability to see Israel as a colonial project, and resisting against a colonial project is not a terror attack. Sabby, good old great Sabby comes in with this receipt. Sabby says, CJ, this says it all. Look at the sign. Saving lives in Israel. And Sabby takes me, hey, they donate to Israel, right? So love the community, always with the receipts, that because I'm a person, I don't care about giving receipts. If I read something, I'll give. Sometimes if I read the article, but I don't have the need. I don't have that need to have to give a receipt. But it is good, I guess, to have them, and meaning that if I read something and I know something, like for example, if I say this was, there was some bombing in Israel killed, I don't need to go and show a article to say, oh, I need to prove that line. I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going to do that. But Nick, for example, is a person who likes to do that and make sure he has receipts. So I hope I clarified that. Receipts do matter. So, all right. So back to this. To that point about receipts, though, Sabby with the awesome receipt. In this case, I'm absolutely happy I'm in community with people who do love giving out those receipts, and that's one of them. But let's go back now to the video and finish out what is said, or the debate that is talked about in the video. We
problem with the Palestinians. No, I don't. Leland,
no,
right now, hold on. Let me just say. What Hamas did, terrorists. Massacre.
Thank you. That's
horrendous.
Huge of you to be able to point out.
Innocent civilians should not be targeted, whether they are innocent Israeli civilians or.
Now, let's say you're a person who thinks this. Even let's say you're Cornel West, because he kind of thinks this. He kind of gives it the same label: innocent civilians on either side. Let's say you have that understanding. Some of us who are more radical don't have that same understanding. But let's say you're a person who have that understanding. Still, what needs to always be inserted with this you must always start from the point that this is an occupying force, that this land belongs to Palestine. That is the starting point that changes the framing here. Because if you say, well, if somebody came to your house, if I came to your house, whatever hit this guy's name, if I came to your house and I said it's time for you go, and some other entity just said your house is now my house and you must go, and I start violently attacking you, you fighting back would be a terrorist attack. That's the starting point. And then you can go on. Now, if some innocent civilians are caught up in the fire, then that's absolutely not what, so go ahead and with that spiel. But what's lacking from the SOCDEM perspective, the professional managerial class left, the NATO left, the boutique left, what's lacking from their perspective is the colonial project part of the assessment of the issue. So that's what's lacking, and that's the point that I want to make here. I'm gonna rewind it a little bit more and play that now. That argument that she says is what allows her to go on these shows, though. So I don't know if she knows that, and that's why they cognitively, the professional managerial class NATO left, do this, where they go, oh, like Cornel West. Oh, yeah, this is terrible too. Hamas, this is terrible too, what they're doing. That is what gets them in the door for the interview in the first place. Because if you didn't have that perspective, maybe, you wouldn't even be asked to come on here to do these interviews. So let's listen to the rest of this here.
Hamas did, terrorists. Massacre.
Thank you. That's
horrendous.
Huge of you to be able to point out.
Innocent civilians should not be targeted, whether they are innocent Israeli civilians or innocent Palestinian civilians,
there's
which
a
you
huge
seem to
difference.
have no issue with.
No, I have a huge issue with it. The fact of the matter is, I have lived there for 4 years. I've reported on it. I realize there's an enormous difference in moral clarity between.
Here is the difference that the killers say. which makes them on the right side of killing, on the righteous side of killing, is the result is the same, yes, but we come from a place, our killings come from a place of morality. All the people we're killing are just by accident. All the people you're killing is just intentional. So what he's basically saying, what's the difference here? A couple of years back, there was an elderly person that took their car and rode through one of the 3rd Street promenades down in LA and killing a lot of people. Now, if there was a young person who was in that same car and saw his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend with another man and did that, what's the difference? He still plows cars into a crowd of people, either scenario. So what's the difference? But this is the sort of splitting of the hairs of why we kill that these Zionist imperialists say. And I'm going to rewind it back so he can make his full point, and then I'll comment.
There's a huge difference. Have no issue with.
No, I have a huge issue with it. The fact of the matter is, I've lived there for 4 years. I've reported on it. I realize there's an enormous difference in moral clarity between Hamas that targets civilians, which you agree they do, and the Israelis that go out of their way not to target civilians. There is an enormous difference.
They go out of their way not to target civilians, as he says. We're about to crush Gaza, as Israel announces they want to crush Gaza.
Comfort is it to the parents of the 1,000 plus children in Gaza right now who are dead?
Yeah.
That Israel theoretically maybe has less barbaric tactics.
So let me just.
They've already killed more.
Israel theoretically maybe. Emma think this is a good way of defending the topic. Let's listen some more.
In Gaza than in the horrific Hamas attacks.
So whose
one atrocity does not. One atrocity does not.
Okay, you've said that 3 times now.
Another atrocity.
Whose responsibility is the fact that those civilians are still there? Is it the responsibility of the Israelis, or is it the responsibility of Hamas that's setting up?
Whose responsibility? Now, this is an apartheid state where everything is controlled by the government of Israel. So just factually and functionally, logistically, the answer to that is Israel controls that, because they control everything that goes in and out of Gaza. They control militarily, they control the West Bank, checkpoints everywhere. So what is he talking about here? But she does not. Let's listen to her. Let me say it this way. Let's listen to her response to that.
Up checkpoints to keep civilians as human shields, or is it the responsibility of the Egyptians that won't let them through Rafah, or is
so? And this is another thing they're doing in the media. When we get to the Palestinian update segment, this is another thing they're doing in media. Is that if Egypt does not want to accept refugees, now it's Egypt's fault that these people in Gaza are going to die. Because some random country who has no historical connection, they're supposed to just take people. Amazing. So let's continue.
Or is the responsibility of the rest of the Arab world that will not take a single Palestinian refugee?
Why is it up to the Arab world? The Arab world is not the one that's displacing these people. The Palestinians. And let's see if the professional managerial class left, the NATO left. Let's see what kind of response she has to that.
To allow them to escape a murderous regime in Hamas.
There is plenty of blame to go around. What I will tell you, though, is are you aware that Netanyahu, as a policy to try to short circuit any efforts at peace and the establishment of a Palestinian state, intentionally propped up Hamas? Because he saw them as a useful foil.
Now, this is a good point that I guarantee you none of their listeners knew. Or watchers, I'm sorry, because this is a television show. I guarantee you a lot of people who was watching this from his perspective didn't know this part. So let's let her continue to point.
Oil. These are not my words. These are his words. That is why the Israeli people overwhelmingly want him to be out of a job because of that failure, because of the intelligence failure, because of the military failure. And now
he doesn't have a comeback for this. He doesn't have a comeback. So let's listen.
So now we're on to Israeli politics.
We're going to stand by and say it's fine for them to drop white phosphorus on civilians.
Which they haven't dropped anyway.
Yes, they have.
They dropped white phosphorus.
According to Human Rights Watch.
I got it right. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Even with a milquetoast watered down talking points for Palestine, this guy got shook by that last part. Because again, you hear all the critiques that I have of this perspective that Krystal has is absolutely lacking clarity. It's absolutely lacking the entire story. It's absolutely lacking the correct framing. It's her job to correct that framing by including how this is an occupation. But this point, and let's watch that again, how he flees here, because you see how when he taps on his drink and he picks it up, or he taps on the table, I think, and he picks it up again because he knows he doesn't have a response to this. Let me see where that was. It was right around here, yeah. All right, so right here. He starts flicking his right hand on the pen. He's nervous because he's like, wow, she's saying something that I don't have a response to.
Additionally propped up Hamas because he saw them as a useful foil. These are not my words.
He's nervous right here.
These are his words. That is why the Israeli people overwhelmed.
Because he just said all this stuff about Hamas being terrible. He's like, wait a minute. You know Netanyahu propped up. You know he paid for them, right? He did. I don't know if he knew that. Maybe he didn't know that. Because look, again, I think this is a funny response that he gives her.
Intentionally propped up Hamas because he saw them as a useful foil. These are not my words.
Look how nervous
These are his words. That is why the Israeli people overwhelmingly want him to be out of a job because of that failure, because of the intelligence failure, because of the military failure. And now we're going to stand by.
Now we're on to Israeli politics.
We're going to stand by and say it's fine for them to drop white phosphorus on civilians.
Which they haven't dropped anyway.
Yes, they have, according to Human Rights Watch.
I got it right. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Wait a minute. Wait. Did he say, I give you 2 extra minutes? And then he said, I got to go when she said the white phosphorus stuff.
Want him to be out of a job because of that failure, because of the intelligence failure, because of the military failure. And now we're going to stand by.
Now we're on to Israeli politics.
We're going to stand by and say it's fine for them to drop white phosphorus on
civilians. I give you 2 extra minutes.
They haven't dropped anyway.
Yes, they have, according to Human Rights Watch.
I got it right. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Man, looked like the imbecile at the end. But I don't think I need to reiterate the critique I have on this. It's the same critique I have for a lot of what the professional managerial class does. Their threshold of something is just falls short of what I would call something. So if the threshold to call something good is mine is here, their threshold is like here. So for example, this wasn't great work. She got in one good point that he was not able to propagandize verbally against. One. But what was lacking, what was omitted. Now, I don't know if it's because Krystal doesn't know the full story or Krystal just is a Zionist and who believes, now we are here, so let's just let Israel stay here and they have the right to exist from that perspective. Not quite clear on why the people in the professional managerial class left refuses to sort of include this point when they're talking about this as a starting point, because that literally changes how you view any subsequent events. If I tell you I'm in a home invasion, this is literally a home invasion. This the whole sort of thing that's happening with Palestinians. This is like a home invasion robbery. So, but if you start from the point in the home invasion robbery story from the victims getting untied, going to the kitchen and grabbing knives, and if you start from that point, that slants the story. That's why it's important to say, wait a minute, this is a home invasion robbery, and the homeowners are the ones that are attacking.